I was born and raised part of my life in Mexico, in Oaxaca in the south. And when I was 14, my parents and I immigrated to California, to Los Angeles, for a better future and more opportunities in life. And I started organizing when I was 19 at school first, and eventually organizing in my community, to the point that in 2011, other young people and I co-founded the National Immigrant Youth Alliance, which is a youth-led national organization of volunteers. We have members in over 26 states, and we have groups that are community-based, youth-led groups. I guess my organization was started with the purpose of empowering the undocumented community, especially undocumented youth, and to achieve some kind of legalization program, whether it is a large immigration reform bill or whether it is the DREAM Act, and then move on from there, step by step. And I'm just going to explain a little bit of what the DREAM Act is. So the DREAM Act is a bill that was introduced in Congress in 2001, and it will basically legalize the status of young people who came here when they were kids, younger than 16, and who went to high school in the U.S., went to college in the U.S., or want to go to college, or want to serve the military. So these are young people that you might be sitting next to in your classrooms. So this proposal has been introduced several times in Congress. It has failed, not because of lack of support, but there's a lot of politics involved with this issue. It is a controversial issue, I guess. So I started organizing around the DREAM Act in 2000. I don't even remember. I was 19. I'm 28 now, so it's been almost 10 years. And so, along with other young people, we have organized our communities to do different kinds of actions, from marches and rallies to civil disobedience actions to lobbying in Congress and marching at the Capitol, and pressuring the president and Congress to pass this bill. It has not been successful, but we've made a lot of progress, I think, in organizing young people. I think it's different because this is a national movement. It varies depending on where people are and what state. I grew up in California. California has had in-state tuition for undocumented students. It's a little more friendly to undocumented people, so it was easier for me to connect with other young people and start organizing and start educating our professors and other young people in our communities. But it was interesting how other organizations started and how the National Immigrant Youth Alliance, or some of the co-founders of the National Immigrant Youth Alliance, met. They met online. They met in a chat room. The young people wanted a way to share their experience without exposing themselves or their families, because there was still a lot of fear and a lot of stigma about being undocumented, 5-6 years ago. And so it was much easier to tell someone about your experience online when you weren't looking at that person. And that's how they realized that they were talking about the same issues, that they were undocumented. And so they started organizing, and they met and started websites with resources for undocumented youth, like scholarships, a list of states that provide in-state tuition for undocumented students, things like that. It was more an online-based type of organizing, and then it branched out to more community-based organizing. You can't just mobilize or expect people to do something if you just post it on Facebook or on Twitter or on your website. You have to have that personal connection with people in the community and know what's really happening if you want to uplift those voices and create the change that you want to create in the communities that you're representing. I think that since we're young, young undocumented people, we have a lot of the same beliefs and aspirations and values that any other American kid has. So if you look at your classroom and look at who's sitting in the classroom, you might actually not be able to tell that the person sitting next to you is undocumented because you both like the same kind of music, the same kind of food, the same movies, the same shows, everything. So we're not different from everyone else. So we, as immigrants, we value the same things: education. That's why our parents brought us here, to give us a better life and to give us, the chance of going to college. We value family. We value honesty. Just so many other things that I think are very you can identify with, whether you're an immigrant or not. We're and I think, and that's one of the things that we try to really portray, that we're not any different. That in fact we are part of our community, and the diversity that we bring to the community makes it richer and makes it better. And when we part of our a big part of the work that we do with the National Immigrant Youth Alliance is making sure that young people and parents are not being deported, that families are not being torn apart. And so how do we use the values, or how do we use I guess what I'm trying to say, how do we use the same sort of ideals and values that we have? We make sure that we take the stories and we really personalize them. We want to make sure that when you're reading about someone, you're not just saying, oh, it's someone I feel sorry for, but it's someone I can identify with. And this could be my child, or this could be my mom or my dad, and this could happen to my family. I think a lot of it is very natural. It comes with building coalitions and building alliances with people who might not be undocumented. It comes in a very natural way sometimes, because there are a lot of folks out there who care about this issue, who many times have family members who are undocumented, or have co-workers or neighbors who are undocumented, and they have seen how this family live in fear, because immigrants are such a big part of a community. Whatever you are, there's someone's neighbors, there's someone's co-workers, someone's friends, classmates. And so when something happens, for example, and there's a family who's about to get deported, or there's a kid who you went to school with, and you realize, I'm going to go to college, but my best friend is not going to be able to do it. I think people are, in a way, it's an incentive for them to do something, because they see it as not being fair, as not being just. And so that's one part. And then how do we build coalitions with larger, I guess that's how allies are made. They really have to, I want to say, like, true allies are made that way, are not people that just read one story and are like, oh, I feel empathy and I'm going to do something about it. I think it's really important to connect with those people and to make it very personal. In terms of building alliances with other organizations, this is a huge and very hot topic right now, and everyone is talking about immigration, and everyone is talking about deportations and undocumented youth. And I guess we have been working on this for so many years, and at first I guess it wasn't that easy, because there were allies and there were people who were scared, who said, don't tell anyone that you're undocumented, don't tell anyone about your family or your legal status, don't make too much noise because they're going to come after you. But I think it was really young people and other community members standing up and saying, no, we're not going to be afraid, we're not going to be silent about what's happening in our communities. We really have to tell the stories, and someone needs to hear them, so that we can, we can do something about it. And so by undocumented people really showing that they were not afraid, other organizations and other allies realize the only way that we're going to be able to do this, or whether we're going to be able to create any change in our immigration policies, is if we work together, and if we support the fact that these people are willing to come out and are willing to be public about their stories. And so we work with a lot of organizations who do a lot of, I guess, legal work, provide services, mobilize and organize other communities. And so there are so many out there, because there are the need for organizing the immigrant community is big. In my experience, when I started organizing, I was part of a larger organization, and I was part of larger coalitions, and they were, mostly adults. Mostly people have been doing this work for many years, and they kept telling us, just make sure that you're telling your story this way, and you're going to be in a press conference with this elected official and that elected official, and just tell your story. But we're not allowed, and we're not, there was no incentive for us to actually talk to these people, to elected officials, and not just tell them our stories, but really understand the process of how laws are made, and how we do have the power to not just tell our sad stories, or tell them about our dreams, but actually come to an agreement with them. And so it wasn't until 2010, I guess, that we realized, well, we're constituents. We have access to these people. These are people that represent our communities, people that were elected to represent our state or our city. And so I think it was interesting. It was just calling the office and requesting a meeting. And at first, we met with just a legislative aide, someone who will take the information that they got from our meeting and tell that to their boss, and then the boss will tell that to the elected official, and that's how we started building those relationships, just by many times just picking up the phone or sending an email and saying, my name is Lizbeth, I live in your district, can I meet with the representative, or can I meet with a staffer? And so that's how we've been able to build those relationships, but also visiting their local offices, and getting, when they're not responsive, or when they're not on the side of the issue that we want them to be in, or they're on the fence, obviously organizing a little bit to pressure them, and getting the community to pressure them. And at the end of the day, they don't want you to bother them, so they will talk to you, and they will try to not necessarily make you feel happy, but at least they will listen. Whether they will do something or not, I think it depends on the power that you have to organize and pressure them. In terms of the National Immigrant Youth Alliance, we're a volunteer-based organization, so we don't get any government grants or grants from any foundations, or we don't get any big donations. A lot of it is a lot of the work that we do it on our free time. So many of us have jobs or school that we have to go to, and then so whenever we find some free time, that's when we do the work. In terms of paying for certain things, or traveling across the country, or organizing, paying for different materials that we need to organize, it's really the community that helps to achieve that. We have a pretty large mailing list, and so sometimes when we fundraise online, or we do presentations in the community, and ask for donations with different community members at churches. We do fundraisers many of our organizations do fundraisers like dances, different community events, raffles, just very creative things to come up with the money and the resources that they need, but it's very much community funded and community led. Despite the many challenges, there's been many great people that have supported me, that have given me the strength when I don't have it, that have believed in me when I don't even believe in myself. Um, I think my mom is definitely one of them. When I was in college, I remember I would cry and be really frustrated because it would be that time where you had to pay for tuition for the next semester, and I wouldn't have enough money, and so I would just sit in my room and cry and cry and cry. My mom would come to my room and comfort me, and just she wouldn't cry with me. She would just be very, very strong, and she would tell me, don't cry, don't let that defeat you. Like, you've come so far, we can make it happen. We'll find a way. So without the support of my mother, without the support of my dad and my siblings, there's no way that I would have, first of all, been able to even say to someone that I was undocumented, and then start finding other young people like myself who are also undocumented. And then there's been ups and downs. There's been some good victories, and there's been some very painful defeats. But throughout all of that, just knowing that there's other people in our communities, there's other young people like me, that my parents are also undocumented, that there's that have other family members who are undocumented, who are counting on me and other people like me to hopefully make something happen someday soon. That's what gives me the strength. I work a lot on deportation cases, and so I work with families who have a loved one who has been detained for months or years, who has been deported, and so we work really hard on all the cases, but once in a while there's a case where it just really hits home, and it makes you. It's painful to see that family go through what they're going through, but it's also and it angers you. And I think part of it is the anger of knowing that there's so much injustice that keeps me going despite the many challenges, but also the love that I feel from my family, from my friends and professors and teachers who have been very supportive throughout the years, who have never let go of my hand. And I'm just, without that support and that community support, there's no way that I could have overcome all of that. I grew up in California, and so there's a big Latino community there. There's a big it's very diverse. The school that I went to, there were a lot of Latino kids, and so they spoke Spanish, and so I could relate to them in many ways. And I guess it wasn't until later that I realized that while it was a good thing to have the diversity, it also made it maybe in a way complacent, because I felt safe. I felt safe with that community, and so there was no need to tell them this are my struggles. This is my story. I'm undocumented. I can't go to college, or I can't pay for college. I can't have access to certain things. And it wasn't until I started connecting with other young people that I realized that sometimes diversity, or sometimes having a large community that's the same, could be a setback for what you're trying to do. And so there's I work with young people in other states who have very different challenges, who the lack of a large community, Latino community, sometimes has been also difficult for them. So it's kind of a there's a fine line between how much or how, to what point is it okay to be surrounded by people of the same background, and then when is it what's the right setting, I guess, and the right diversity that you have in your community that makes you stand up for what you believe in. And so I'm thinking a little bit of like I guess, young people in North Carolina or in Georgia or in Alabama who uh, have different challenges, because there is a community that they can relate to, but there's also a lot of um, fear to go out of that community and share that experience, and even ask for help sometimes, right? So I guess it's kind of hard to answer that question because I come from California, so it's, I mean, my specific challenge was, I didn't feel like I had to tell anyone about my status, uh, but I felt the power of community and the power of what an organized community um, could do when I went to college. It wasn't until I went to college and I I didn't move away from California, from LA necessarily, but I was in a different community that had a lot of challenges, uh, a lot of poverty, lack of good education, lack of just resources in terms of medical care, just so many things that I didn't necessarily pay attention to when I was younger because I was too busy just trying to go to school and trying to get into college. And then once I was able to do that, I realized there's more, there's more out there that I could be fighting for. Our movement has been has become stronger with after young people started coming out as undocumented, and now our parents are telling their stories and saying, I'm also undocumented and I'm also part of this community. So the idea of coming out, I think we took that from the LGBT movement, coming out as gay. And we read a little bit about Harvey Milk and uh, his work and his experience and just how he motivated other people to come out as gay. And so we took that, I guess, that experience and we have used it in our movement to say we're also coming out, but we're coming out as undocumented. And there are queer people in our movement who are saying we're coming out as undocumented and queer, or undocumented queer. And so we've used some of the lessons and tactics of other movements. For example, in 2010, myself and 4 other young people, we participated in the first civil disobedience action by undocumented youth, by undocumented people in this country. So we were fighting for the DREAM Act, and we realized we were running out of time. So let's do something drastic. We know that, dreamers, I guess we call ourselves dreamers because of the DREAM Act. We know that dreamers are being deported. We know that our families are being deported, that there's a crisis in the community. So let's do something that will really show what we're talking about, that will really illustrate what's already happening in our community and just dramatize it even more. So we decided to go to Arizona. This was right after the passage of SB 1070, which is a very anti-immigrant law in that state, and it has been used as a model for other similar laws in other states. So we traveled to Arizona. We decided to go to the office of Senator John McCain, who's a Republican and who was very supportive of immigration reform in the past, was very supportive of the DREAM Act, and then who in 2007 decided to walk out of the vote for the DREAM Act that year because he knew he was going to be running for president in the following year. So he didn't want to seem weak on immigration to his base. So he decided to just walk on the vote, but he walked on all of us and our lives. And so we went to his office. We asked to we wore caps and gowns, and so we sat on the floor and we said, we're not going to move, we're not going to go until we get the senator to co-sponsor the DREAM Act, and to help us pass the DREAM Act. He never co-sponsored, and we ended up sitting in that office for about 6.5 hours, and then getting arrested and put in deportation proceedings. We were released later, but there was so much media attention. The New York Times, CNN, media outlets from all over the world were paid so much attention to that story, because it was the first time that willingly undocumented people were putting their future and their lives on the line, because we could potentially be deported. And the reason we did it was because we knew, well, we believed that our community was going to be behind us and that we were going to be okay, but we also had the experience of having stopped other people's deportation, so we knew that there was a way to do this. But most importantly, we felt like without taking bold action and bold risk, nothing was going to happen, and there was really no future for us without being able to legalize our status. So we took lessons from the civil rights movement and the students who sat at the lunch counters to fight segregation. You know, we took that lesson and said, well, what can we do? What is sort of the equivalent of us sitting at a lunch counter and really sparking a conversation and really showcasing what's really happening every single day with our families, with ourselves, and with our people like us. And so we continue to try to learn from past movements. Many times when I was feeling defeated, when I was feeling like I couldn't go on anymore because the challenges were just too many, in the there were certain things I couldn't do, and I felt like it was the end. I think at some point, everyone goes through this, and I was talking to my brother recently about it. Everyone goes through a period of time where even if you've known that you're undocumented for a long time, there's a point where you realize this is what it means to be undocumented. These are my limitations. I'm not going to be able to become a doctor or a lawyer by the time I don't know, I wanted to be a lawyer, but before the age of 30, and I'm still not a lawyer, but I'll get there someday. And so it's frustrating. And so I think the question of what will you tell other young people in your place, or other undocumented young people. Somebody asked me that a while back, and it was something like, what would you tell a young, if you could talk to a young Lizbeth, when she was 16 or 17, what would you tell her? And I think a few years ago I would have said, leave, go back to Mexico, or do something else, because you're gonna get stuck here and you're not gonna be able to do anything. That has changed, because I think we've been able to make some great changes and have made some victories, and we're safer than we were years ago, and there's no reason to hide that you're undocumented, because you should not be ashamed of that. You should not be scared of what people are going to say, or that you're not going to be able to access certain things, because throughout the years we've been able to build a strong network and of supporters, of people who now understand our challenges, who understand our experiences a little bit more. And so I think what I would tell young people is, think of a time where you thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. this is just too much. What am I doing? If it was like a paper or a project, or you were in a class that you absolutely hated and you thought this is going to be, you know, just a nightmare, and I'm not going to be able to pass this class or to finish this project on time. If you were able to do it, just think of that. At that time you told yourself, I can't do this. And then when you actually overcame that challenge. Because that's what it is. Life is all about challenges, and so when you overcome one, you feel good about yourself. You know the power that you have, and the ability that you have to overcome those challenges. And so the more that you think of your past and that one time or that one particular instance where you thought this is it, like I can't keep going, and then how you overcame that, just keep thinking about that. The other thing is, you just have to speak up, and you have to connect with other young people. There are other folks out there who are just like you, who have had the same experiences, who have felt at some point that it's just too much and that you can't do it anymore and it's too painful. But there's so many things out there that I think are worth fighting for. And being with your family, being with your friends, realizing that dream of yours of going to college or becoming an artist or whatever it is that you want to become, it's worth fighting for, and it's worth every single challenge.